Hey everybody, Nate here from WASD20. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be taking a look and giving a review of the new Unpainted miniatures from WizKids Games for both Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons. In this review I will also be comparing them a little bit to the Reaper Bones line, which is of course a very popular unpainted plastic miniature. Very similar in a lot of ways, but there are some key differences here, so we'll take a look at that too. So these are the Pathfinder Battles Deep Cuts miniatures. The Dungeons & Dragons line is called Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures, and I actually couldn't find any of those. They didn't have any at my local game shop. So I just picked these up, but they're almost identical to the D&D ones. Same material, same packaging and bases and all that stuff. The sculpts are a little bit different. Like these goblins here are the Pathfinder style goblins, and of course the D&D ones are going to have more of the D&D 5th edition style goblins. But other than that, this review can definitely serve for both of them. We're going to open these up and take a look. Let's start off with the human male cleric here. Now these retail for $3.99 per pack, and that's the general price on them. They have monsters and heroes, and one interesting choice they made is to include basically two of the same hero. So this has two human male clerics. They do come with a couple of bases here. They're very thin bases. And now let's take a look at the sculpts themselves. Here we've got our human male paladin, or cleric rather. Overall, this is a really nice looking sculpt. I'm pretty impressed by it. This right here does have a little curve to it. It's a little bit bendy, very thin. In bones material, I don't think you'd be able to get this thin. So we will be taking a look at the bones too and doing some comparison for sure, because that's going to be the major competition for these. But so far I am pretty impressed by these. The material is definitely a harder material than bones material, and stiffer. So anyway, two different clerics there. Someone told me that one of them, like this, is supposed to be lower level than this one. I don't know if that's true. It doesn't really look like it's necessarily that way to me, but could be. This one is a little beefier armor, bigger spell effect. I don't know how I would paint this, to be honest. I would have to do some research on that, but it does fit the base pretty well there. Base is very thin as compared to like the ones I got with my Reaper Bones here, which are a little thicker. I'd kind of prefer a thicker base if I were to have a choice, but it is nice that they include a base. Reaper Bones do not include those. Alright, so that is our human male cleric. Let's take a look at the human female rogue here. So they had a very wide variety of heroic classes. They had several different races: halfling, dwarf, elf, human, half-elf, half-orc. So you are seeing some mold lines for sure down her arm there, just like you would on the bones. I don't worry about those too much. I'm just painting for tabletop quality. Usually I try to file them down a little bit, but I don't stress it. So overall, pretty good looking sculpt there. I can see some decent detail. Not as good on this one as I feel like there was on the human male cleric. And let's take a look at this one. I really like this sculpt. This is really cool. The two daggers, crossed arms. Really cool clothing and armor combo. So yeah, pretty significant mold line down her leg. Right there. Definitely pretty prominent. But overall, a really nice looking sculpt. So these are pre-primed with Vallejo primer, and I haven't tried it yet, but the guy at the hobby shop said that these just paint so well. Like the paint goes on very, very well. And let's take a look at the goblins. WizKids in the past, I have some of their pre-painted miniatures, which are pretty awfully painted, I might add, but they are painted. So these bases are definitely smaller than the bases for the heroes, which makes sense. So here's our first little goblin there. Really good detail on the face. So it's got the ridiculous, like, big football-headed Paizo Pathfinder style. Some mold lines under the bow there, but really good detail overall. And a nice hard material. Again, something like this, very thin. I don't feel like that would do very well in the bones material, for example. So that's this harder material. You're able to get some thinner weapons and such. Nice detail on the edge of the cloak there. Kind of tattered looking. Overall, not bad. And let's take a look at this one right here. I love this sculpt, the two swords. And he's got these little spikes on his head. That's pretty cool looking. A nice smile. Just a ton of detail you can see on their faces. Really nice. Now, let's compare this to the bones. Can see if he fits on the base well here. Yep, he does. So, in the bones material, here I've got one unpainted. I'll probably have to adjust my lighting a little bit because they just don't show up well. They tend to get overexposed in that white material. Adjusted my exposure and you can see it a little better, but still hard to make out. So it's a combination here of my camera having trouble viewing the stark white of the bones material, but there is clearly less detail. Everything's just a little more muddy than in the WizKids material. Clearly a lot more detail in the face on the WizKids material. So anyway, that's just something to know. That's definitely an advantage to these. Now, these are a little more pricey for some of them. For example, the 3 goblins together were $3.99, whereas these little guys were, I think, $2.99 for 4 of them, if I'm remembering correctly. So that is a small difference, not a huge deal, but they are a little bit more. I've got no major problems with the Bones Goblins. I've got some that are painted up here, and they can look real nice. So it's not like I found the detail to be really that terrible for the quality I'm going for, just for, you know, using them at the table. But it is nice that these do have more detail. The other thing I like about these is the base is nice and small. I favor a small base because I always want to base them on my own. Whereas these goblins here, they have a pretty big, you can see it better on this one maybe, a pretty big base on those that I don't feel is really necessary. I usually just put them on these little clay things I made, or a washer. But it is nice that these have a smaller base. A little bit thin again. I prefer a little thicker, but not bad. On the price of the other ones here, I find them to be quite good. $3.99 for 2 of them gets you. That's $1.99 each, which is about the cheapest you can find any Bones miniatures for like a single hero. So, yeah, pretty good on price for the most part. And the level of detail is impressive. So if we look at these bones here, let me adjust my exposure again. There we go. You can see them a little bit better now. The details are a little muddier. These are much more crisp on the WizKids ones. You also have the problem of the weapons bending if they're a really thin weapon, whereas these seem much more rigid, for sure. Now, that could be dangerous because they can snap more easily, maybe. But anyway, if I had to choose one, I would probably go with these, especially since I hear they paint so easily. I have heard that you can paint bones without priming. I haven't had too good of luck with that, but I also don't use the suggested paint. They suggest MSP paint for bones, and that will go on much nicer. So maybe that's the case. I do have a little bit of MSP paint, but not much. Anyway, since I use Vallejo paint, I imagine I'll be buying more of these. Now, it's too bad I just got the Bones 3 Kickstarter, and I'm all loaded up on those, so I probably won't be buying too many of these, but wanted to at least get a few for review for you guys. Would have preferred to get some of the D&D sculpts as well, not just the Pathfinder ones. Would be nice to have some D&D goblins, for example. But at least we did get to do a little comparison between both of the Pathfinder-style goblins in Bones versus in WizKids. So now that we've taken a pretty up-close look at the miniatures, let's talk about what I think of them overall. Overall, my impressions are very favorable. They are a product I can highly recommend. They seem like they're a really good quality miniature at a very competitive price point that makes it hard for me to justify buying Reaper Bones in the future. Now, the huge advantage that Reaper Bones has over these WizKids Unpainted miniatures is that the Reaper Bones library is just huge because they've been doing it for a few years now, and they've just produced tons and tons of miniatures, way more sculpts, way more options for monsters, heroes, etc. So that's definitely something that, WizKids is going to have to play some catch up. But taken side by side, let's say that I wanted to play a human cleric and I find a sculpt I like in both brands. I'm going to pick the WizKids Unpainted just because of the advantages. I think that they are pre-primed with Vallejo primer, and they will take the paint that I already own much easier straight out of the box. Secondly, they are really crisp and just higher in detail overall because of the harder material that we're working with here. So while I don't see Reaper Bones going away anytime soon, I do think that these have a lot of advantages over them, and I definitely recommend people check them out. If you have them, I would love to hear from you. What is your impression so far? How do you think they take paint? How do you think they compare to the Reaper Bones material? And if you have any other questions or comments, I always love to hear from you down below. If you are interested in learning how you can jump aboard to support WASD20, check out 2 links below. There's my Amazon affiliate link as well as a link to my Patreon page where you can become a monthly supporter. Your support enables me to keep on buying products like this for review, so definitely check those out. And yeah, everybody take care. You'll see me again very soon.